Can the living be killed by the dead? This is the question Hercule Poirot must answer in A Haunting in Venice, his most terrifying case yet. But in a world of shadows and secrets, who can be trusted? Starring Kenneth Branagh, Jamie Dornan, Tina Fey, Kelly Riley, Michelle Yeoh. Presented by 20th Century Studios. A Haunting in Venice. Directed by Kenneth Branagh. Rated PG-13. Experience the movie event only in theaters Friday. Tickets on sale now.
Come, walk down the winding path. Don't mind the spooks and monsters. They stay hidden within the trees. There are mysteries in this world that you need to know, and paranormal truths that need to be told. Come, step up into the caravan, where we share tales of old as well as new accounts about things you thought only existed in your nightmares.
Do you hear that? The rustling of the leaves? Welcome, dear traveler, to Loretober Eves. I want to thank our Patreons, Jose Maguina, Frater Mutada in Lumine, Natalie, Joseph, Victoria, Donna, Kadrick, Jim, and Robin for signing up with us. Make sure you check us out on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, under the name The Caravan Library of Lore. And please don't forget to rate and review. Without further ado, our guest tonight, Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony, psychic explorer, also known as the psychic lawyer, is a fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. This psychic explorer travels to mystical locations in remote corners of the world to examine ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomena. Mark appears nationwide on TV and radio, including CBS TV's The Doctors, Gaia TV's Beyond Belief with George Norrie. He is the co-host of The Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. He is a featured speaker at conferences, expos, and universities which include Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. Mark Anthony is a columnist for Best Holistic Life magazine. He is the author of The Afterlife Frequency. His other best-selling books are Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity.
All right. Well, today we have Mark Anthony with us here inside the caravan. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Lady Ann. It is an honor to be here, and I've been looking forward to this because I just really like your energy, and I know this will be a fun interview.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I've been looking forward to it as well. And I'm really interested about your new book, The Afterlife Frequency. In it, you said that you grew up psychic. When did you first realize this?
I was about 3.5 years old, and I started seeing invisible friends, except for the fact that my mom and dad could see them too. Okay.
Wow.
And yeah, both of my parents had these abilities. It runs for generations in the family, on both sides of the family. And I've done the research and been able to track it back into the 1890s, both on my dad's and my mother's sides of the family. And it probably goes back further than that, but it's just that, records and the accounts of the people that I had to talk to, a lot of them have passed now. This is literally in my DNA. And for people need to understand that my family wasn't like a group of people wearing turbans running around going, oh, we'll read your fortune. My dad was Dad was a Navy SEAL. Okay. And he was a NASA engineer. And my mother was a commercial illustrator and an artist. And this is a genetic trait that runs in the family. In fact, it was even documented in 2016 PBS did a special called The Italian Americans. And it was like I think it was a 4-hour special, 2 hours one night, 2 hours the next night. Well, my mother's family had emigrated from Italy, and my maternal great-grandmother, Giovanna, was known in the Italian New York, New Jersey community as the woman who knew things. They actually did a segment about her in this PBS special on the Italian Americans. And it was amazing. I remember watching this, with my siblings, and was like, oh my God. And they're showing pictures of our family and footage and talking about her and her, what we now would call psychic abilities. So, so this has been just part of me from day one.
That's incredible. That's really amazing. And it's so interesting. So how was it different then growing up with parents that were psychics? Because one of my things, and something that I talk about on the show a lot, is how important it is when your children come to you and they're telling you, hey, I've seen this, or I've experienced this, or felt this. A lot of the times and I understand it, we can be afraid. So then we're wanting to discount that. For me, I always felt that it was extremely important to talk to my kids and be like, okay, what did it look like? And ask them about their experience and really provide that support, because if you tell them this stuff doesn't exist, they have a really intense experience, that's going to traumatize them.
I would agree. Absolutely. And, you've got 3 kids, so you completely understand. I think that for parents who are listening whose children start saying, I see this or I hear that, you hit the nail on the head, Lady Ann. Listen to them. Let them tell you about it. Was it scary? Was it uplifting? Because it's not unusual for children to have quote unquote invisible friends. But if the child says, I'm hearing voices that tell me to take an axe and kill everybody. All right. Now that's not spirit contact. That could be
Right.
severe. That's a severe mental disorder. And I don't mean to sound facetious by saying that. It's, you've got to listen. Don't jump to conclusions. And then if the child starts talking about maybe deceased loved ones in the family, particularly ones that they never met. So let's say that one of your kids starts talking to you about one of your grandparents that may have passed that child has never met, and starts giving you a fair degree of accuracy, and not just things maybe that they heard over the dinner table, with other family members talking.
Right.
Then, you may have a medium on your hands. And, don't freak out. Oh, it's not, and the people jump in, oh my gosh, it must be demons talking to them. Let's stop it with that nonsense. Right. And realize that some people are very sensitive to frequency. That's one of the reasons my book is named The Afterlife Frequency, because we all have the ability to be sensitive to frequency and to energy. It's just that some people are more sensitive about, with it than others.
Right. No, that's very true. I'll never forget so my grandfather, he passed away in 2011. I only had 2 children at the time. And my youngest, after he had passed, so there was something that he did just for me when I was really little. He always went to there was you put the coin in it and you turn it and a little egg comes out, and in the egg, there's a different prize. Well, these ones were dinosaurs, because I always loved dinosaurs. So he would come home from the store and he would surprise me with different dinosaurs. Well, I never told anybody that. It just never really came up. It wasn't pertinent. And one day after he passed, my daughter comes to me and she says, Papa Don, he's got dinosaurs in his pocket.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Oh, my goodness. There you go. Perfect.
Right?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. There you go. There's a verifiable fact that child did not know.
Exactly. It's just chills. Now, I'm really curious about, a psychic lawyer.
Yes. I laugh because it certainly is a conversation starter or ender, depending on who the person is.
Right. So tell me more about that.
People think that all lawyers are these vampiric, blood-sucking monsters with no soul. And I have to say that there are several, having been in the practice of law. And that mediums that, were running around in fields of daisy, flinging granola, singing Kumbaya. And there actually are people that do things like that. But all joking aside, is that I was born a medium. And initially, Lady Ann, I was drawn to the spiritual. I wanted to go into the clergy, which is not unusual for a medium. we're surrounded by spirits. We want to learn more. But I could see that it was so filled with rules and regulations and it was very restrictive, and that I decided not to do that. So I decided to become an attorney. Now, the joke I like to make is I jumped out of the regulatory frying pan into the legal fire, because we talk about rules and regulations. But the thing is, what does a lawyer do? A lawyer helps people through very difficult times. And I was a prosecutor, then a criminal defense attorney, as well as a complex civil litigation lawyer. So I help people cope with traumas in their life, such as getting arrested or getting severely injured or harmed in some other way. And what does a medium do? A medium helps people cope with the passing of a loved one by facilitating communication between the bereaved loved one and their loved ones in spirit.
Right.
And both jobs are about evidence, because as a lawyer, you certainly have to present verifiable and very strong evidence to prove your case. And it's the same thing with the medium. You have to produce evidence to substantiate the identity of the person coming through and to help validate the messages that he or she or they are transmitting. And so I found that there actually is a link between the two, because it all revolves on helping people and evidence. And even though a lot of lawyers have this rap as being these cold-hearted, blood-sucking monsters, I've found that really the best lawyers relate to clients on a personal level and have empathy. And certainly that goes without saying with mediums. You have to have those traits to relate to your clients.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And have you ever used the ability during a case? Have you ever merged the two?
Yeah, it's part of my skill set, so it kind of splashes over quite a bit. Just for the record, while I do appear on radio and television as a legal analyst now, particularly in cases where the paranormal and the legal system collide, which actually happens more than you might think. I'm a regular guest. By regular, I mean, once or twice a year on Coast to Coast AM radio with George Norrie, because he likes to do this bit with me called haunted real estate. In other words, people trying to sell a house, or people that want to buy a house that has a haunted reputation. The question is, do things that go bump in the night bump up property values, or do they bump them down? Coast to Coast always gets a big kick out of that, but that's only one of the things that I do there. When I was practicing law full time, certainly my abilities and insights would come in play. And in fact, in my new book, The Afterlife Frequency, I give several examples of what it was like practicing law and being a medium at the same time.
That's incredible.
Well, it certainly made for an interesting avocation. When I was a prosecutor, when I was a young prosecutor, fresh out of law school, and a prosecutor. And so some people don't know what it is. Where did you get your clients? Well, the police would arrest them, and then we would bring forth the evidence to to convict them or let them go if the evidence didn't support that. But when they would bring in people that had been arrested, and I'd be assigned to what's called first appearance. You have to go in front of a judge within 24 hours when you've been arrested, and then the judge determines, should I release this person on their own recognizance, the ROR, or should I let them be able to post bail, post a bond. And what would happen is, before I'd get the police report, I'd say, okay, this guy's he's a child molester. All right, this one is drunk driving. All right, this one. And my co-counsels be like, how do you know that? You haven't even looked at the reports yet. And they're looking at the reports and go, you're right, And the thing is, I would just pick up on these things. So it kind of got to be this thing that Mark knows these things. And it was a bit of a thing in the office. So they knew that I had these insights. And I could go on and tell stories about that. But all of those are in my books, Never Letting Go, Evidence of Eternity, and of course my new book, The Afterlife Frequency.
Right. Now, has that ever made it difficult for you in the sense of making you question if you want to continue that line of work? I mean, for me, somebody who is sensitive and who does pick up on things. Originally, so I was in search and rescue, and I was going to be going over into the police field. And after some of the stuff that I encountered, especially out on search and rescue, it changed my mind. And I decided not to do it because it was too heavy.
It's very grueling, very draining. I've consulted on a number of high profile cases, murders, and you get a lot of insights. And the thing about mediumship is when a spirit connects with me, one of the first things that they transmit to me is how that person died. And I'll see things, hear things, feel things. I get physical sensations. And, especially when you're working on murders, how the person died is generally not very pleasant. Speaking of which, I remember one time I was doing a reading for somebody and this guy came through. I said, he's on a father level. And she said, okay. And I said, I feel like a boat and I feel like I'm falling into the water and it's dark. And I said, this is going to sound creepy. I said, but I feel like there's sharks everywhere. And so then she started kind of like getting really upset. And I go, I'm sorry. She goes, well, she said, I had this uncle and he was on some boat at night. And then all of a sudden he like disappeared. And they assumed that he fell off the boat and his body was never found. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's like, and I don't even want to describe the sensations that were associated with his passing, but it was pretty grisly. And, so that's one of the difficulties of being a medium is experiencing things like that. But on the flip side of the coin, that also brought some resolution to the family. I don't know how happy that made them. But then again, when I'm able to make a connection with somebody and a loved one comes through, let's say a parent who, God forbid, has lost a child, the messages that are transmitted are verifiable facts. They bring peace, healing, resolution, messages of love, and to see and feel some of the pain and anguish come out of the bereaved loved one. That's what really matters. That's what this is all about.
That's true. Now, have you ever had an experience where a spirit has come to you that doesn't want to leave?
No, never. I hear a lot of people say things like that. To me, it's like I turn it on and I turn it off because you have to learn that discipline. I know a lot of maybe teens and people in their early 20s that I'm a medium and they come to me all the time. They run around and, and it's like these goofy TV shows where people run into somebody that's, in a grocery store and runs up to them. Oh, I'm a medium, blah, 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 and starts flinging a reading at them. Well, first off, that's unethical to do because that person is at a grocery store to pick out, cantaloupes or apples or whatever, not to all of a sudden, engage in spirit communication. Secondly, a lot of those shows you have to keep in mind are scripted and there's an entire film crew there. And that 2-minute reading probably took 4 to 5 hours to film. Everybody in the background has to sign releases so their face can be on there. And there's all these different camera angles and lighting and sound and makeup's all perfect. Yeah, tell me that just happened in, 2 minutes. Because it doesn't. I mean, I'm on TV a lot. I know, and I see this, And so that gives people a misconception of what mediumship really is, and it isn't about just going and flinging a reading on somebody. And it's unethical even for people who are highly gifted to just go and just give a reading to somebody who didn't come to them for it, didn't ask for it, or wasn't open to it. Because it can be very unsettling. And also, you don't leave the doors and windows of your house open 24/7. So why would you leave your brain open 24/7? And to me, it denigrates the quality of the contact if you're constantly open. So you set the parameters. You let the afterlife frequency know I'm either doing this or I'm not. And spirits will respect that. And in fact, it enhances the quality of the contact when you do that.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you for that very much. Now, you're also known as the psychic explorer. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's funny. The media loves giving me all sorts of nicknames. That one I really like. I'm good with the psychic lawyer too. And I've always had an intense interest in the study of the afterlife, the study of belief systems, the study of God. I've also had an intense love of archaeology, history, philosophy, theology, culture. So I've spent quite a bit of my life traveling around the world to explore ancient mysteries. I remember when I first time I went to Loch Ness. I mean, I was just like, and I'm so disappointed that I didn't see some monster, your grandfather with the dinosaurs and all that. but I mean, it was fantastic in and of itself, and going to various like ancient ruins and temples and studying this and feeling it up close. And
Yeah.
so that's why I appear on a lot of shows like this one to discuss ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomenon. And so because I travel and do all these things, I got labeled the psychic explorer. So
Nice.
yeah.
Okay. I love it. So, okay, two questions. Number one, where is your favorite place that you've ever traveled to? And where is the place that you've traveled to that had the most profound experience for you?
Ooh, wow, these are good questions. Okay. The favorite place I've ever, there's been so many. As soon as you said that, three places sprang to mind: Paris, France, Maui in Hawaii,
Oh.
and Venice,
Oh.
Venice, Italy. Venice, just there's a magic to the place.
Mm.
Paris was hauntingly familiar. And yes, I
Oh,
do
wow.
believe in reincarnation. And I remember the first time I was in Paris, we got off at the train station, and then you take this escalator up, and I saw the Arc de Triomphe was like the first thing that I saw. And a voice came in my head that didn't sound like the voice I normally hear in my head. And it said,
Oh.
"I'm home." Okay.
Wow.
Okay. And it's just Paris just seems so familiar.
Right.
Not that my French is very good at all, and I would say things that people would look at me, there'd be a delay, they'd burst out laughing, but they did understand what I was saying. It was like parlez-vous français. I remember one of the funniest things I heard. This is on my second or third trip to Paris. I was staying in this hotel, and you know how, like, if we're watching a commercial about a French restaurant, they go, "Come to the French restaurant, on top croissant." They speak
Yes.
English with this French accent. Well, there was a commercial in France about football. It goes,
Oh.
"Football, d'Americain, c'est
Oh,
bon."
no.
And they were speaking French with a Brooklyn accent, and I'm
Oh,
looking
wow.
at this, and I'm like, so that's how they imitate us.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's great.
But
That would be quite the experience.
It was quite the experience. But there have been other places I've been to, like Kyoto, Japan is just elegant and beautiful city. It's the center, if you will, of Japanese Zen Buddhism. And there's temples all over the place in these incredible Zen gardens. And I remember I was traveling with a friend, Billy, and he had been living in Japan for some time teaching English. And so we're at the Zen garden, and it's beautiful. Okay. And Zen gardens, it's all those little stones where, the Japanese Buddhist monks, they arrange patterns in the stones around like a larger stone or around bonsai trees. And it's like perfect, meticulous. I mean, these people don't allow weeds to grow anywhere. I mean,
Right.
it is just like beautiful. And I was looking at it, and he goes, "Just let it happen." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Let it happen." And so he walked off, and he was doing something else. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I realized mentally I was somewhere else. And then I understood, so that's the power of this, is when you just stop thinking and let yourself go. It's as if I was transported into this different frequency, and it was just the most amazing experience. And so I would say that Kyoto, Japan is also on my list of favorite places. I mean, we could be here all day, me talking about those. Now, the question number 2 that you asked, the one with the most profound. I was a 19-year-old college student, and I was in Munich, Germany. I have to admit, I was a college student, so my friends and I, we were hitting the beer gardens, and we went to the Hofbrauhaus and we were drinking the beer. And it's funny because, German beer is like 3 times the potency of an American beer. It's like, I only had 2 beers, and you're like 6 here. So, we'd had a really good time. And then the next morning, I was feeling kind of rough. We decided that we wanted to go. There was about half a dozen of us. Let's go to Dachau concentration camp. All right, so here I am, at 19 years old. I'm, somewhat hungover, and we go to Dachau, which was one of the extermination camps of the Third Reich. I remember we got there, and we were reading stuff about it. So this was one of the smaller camps. Only 40,000 people were executed there. I'm like, okay, only 40,000. looking back on it, I could not have walked into a situation in worse shape. Okay.
Right.
Because I wasn't prepared. Yes, I knew I was a medium. Yes, and then all of a sudden I started feeling what had happened there. And matter
Oh.
retains vibration. And so I was picking up on what had happened, and I saw myself surrounded by all of these people wearing these striped clothing, the white and black stripes with their sunken faces and their eyes and the shrieking and the terror. And it was, oh my God, Lady Ann, I was like losing it, and I'm freaking out. And I remember I just collapsed to my knees and I burst into tears. And my college buddies are like, dude, what is your problem? Okay. So here I am, I'm crying, and the thing is, we were college students from all over the world, but there was a friend that was with me. His name was Dave, and he came over and he grabbed me by the arm. He goes, okay, buddy. He goes, we're getting out of here. And he knew about me and he knew about my family. He goes, Mark, I don't know what was going on, but obviously you were experiencing something and I couldn't. He goes, you were being tortured and I could not let you do this. And what it was, I wasn't prepared for this. Okay. I was hungover. My defenses were down. I wasn't shielding myself from the negative vibration of what had happened. And I started seeing all these people who had been slaughtered there. And he got me on a bus and we got back to Munich, and, we just passed it. He just, Mark just, he's just partied too much last night. So that was absolutely, absolutely horrific. Now, I've been in other situations like that, but I was ready for it. Like when I went to visit Ground Zero a few years ago in New York City, I could only really handle it for about a half hour. But I knew I was going there. Obviously I knew it would happen, but I could feel it. But I will say this, the memorial that they built with the waterfalls has got to be the most tasteful, the most elegant, the most beautiful tribute to see this water just flowing into what appears to be eternity. So I really have to give a tremendous amount of credit and admiration to that. So I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, no, it does so much. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think about this. I got a funny story along those lines. I don't know how you follow up those two incidents with something funny, but I was I was at the Tower of London one time, and it was a dreary late February, early March. It was sometime around there, and it was perfect London weather. It was gray. It was like 40 degrees and drizzling. It's about as London as it gets, So I'm walking around the Tower of London. Now, the Tower of London used to be where the British royal family lived in the medieval era and up until the Enlightenment, and then they started building, bigger and less primitive looking palaces. The Tower of London was also where prisoners were sent. So if you got sent to the Tower, that was a really bad thing. Yes. So I'm walking around and I was thinking about, because I really like history, and I knew that, Henry VIII, we'd all heard about Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Oh, yes. And I started thinking, I go, I wonder where Anne Boleyn, his second wife, okay, the queen, I wonder where Anne Boleyn, was she executed here? Because I knew he had her beheaded, and I was I don't know why, I was just thinking so much about Anne Boleyn. So I sit down on this bench, and I'm looking around, and all of a sudden, I look to my left and down, and there's this glass sign, and it's next to the bench I'm sitting on, and it's etched in there, "This be the site where Queen Anne Boleyn was executed by order of King Henry VIII. I know, and the only thing missing was a soundtrack going,
right?
And I was like, and I'm looking at this, and part of me is freaking out, and part of me wants to laugh, and the worst part was nobody was with me. I'm like, oh, come on, somebody was with me, but nobody was there to take a picture of me pointing at the sign and this. Right. But this was one of those incidents, and then later, I found out where Queen Anne Boleyn, who is buried on the property in a church. I did visit her gravesite. That was one of those, I just did not expect that to happen.
That's incredible. Too bad that nobody was there, because that was definitely one of those whoa moments.
Yeah, that's one of those, but I swear all of that is exactly what happened. So, there have been a number of incidents like that. And, once again, that gets into, what I'm known as a psychic explorer, because, I was there and I was studying phenomenon there. that was actually my day off. I thought, well, it's my day off. I'll spend it at the Tower of London.
Right. Quite the day off. Now,
Yeah.
I'd like to get into the afterlife frequency. Ask, how is it different from other books by mediums?
This book it's the culmination of everything that I've done and studied in my life. And how it's different from books by other mediums is that it takes a scientific approach to bridge the divide between faith and science. So those of us who study the afterlife, I refer to communication with spirits as interdimensional communication. And the different types have been categorized. There's been near-death experiences, there's deathbed visions, there's contact through a medium, there's visitations, there's out-of-body experiences, and they've all been put into separate categories. I don't see that as what it really is. They're all interrelated, and they're all possible based on sound scientific principles, and all this can be explained through quantum physics. So what I've done is explain the different forms of interdimensional communication through scientific facts, through quantum physics, through theory, to explain that interdimensional communication, the afterlife, is not only real, but that there is a solid and logical explanation for this. And I've developed new terminology based on 21st century science to explain spiritual phenomenon. And the thing is, for people who are listening to this, when you start hearing, oh God, quantum physics, the spoiler alert I have to tell you is, please do not expect a dry and complicated read, because nobody wants to read that. And it's my job as the author to explain this in a way that people want to read it, and also to illustrate my concepts with stories to show how this is not only possible, but this is what happens. Right. So this is a serious scientific explanation of spirit communication, and it's been endorsed by some of the top afterlife and survival of consciousness scientists in the world.
Wow. Now, in the new terms that you have developed,
electromagnetic soul. You can call it the EMS. The EMS.
Okay. The EMS.
Yeah,
can you explain that?
Yeah, the EMS, the electromagnetic soul, is one of the signature theories that I'm introducing in this book. And neuroscience is the study of the human brain. And if you study neuroscience and look at a neuroscience textbook, maybe it's 1,000 pages long, yet there's only 1 or 2 paragraphs, if that, about consciousness. Consciousness is who and what we are. In the realm of faith, it's referred to as either a spirit or a soul. And the official position, Lady Ann, of neuroscience is that the brain, the organ in our body, the brain creates consciousness, and it does it through chemical reactions and electrical impulses. But neuroscientists have absolutely no idea how it happens. The reason for that is the brain doesn't create the consciousness, it only hosts it. Very much the way a computer hard drive does not create the programs and the data that are on it, it merely hosts them. And we know from the laws of physics, the laws of thermodynamics, that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. We know from biology that the human body, the nervous system, and particularly the brain, has an electrical field. We know from quantum physics that everything on the most basic level, there's molecules that are made of atoms, that are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, that in turn are made of a minute particle, the building block of everything in our universe, which is quantum, which is electromagnetic energy. So the brain has this electromagnetic field, and the people of faith refer to who and what we are as a soul and a spirit. And think about it. Every major religion believes that the soul pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and then when the body dies, moves on. So taking this lifetime of research and the scientific understanding of the brain, of quantum physics, and with consciousness, I developed the term the electromagnetic soul to describe what we really are. which is pure consciousness that is eternal electromagnetic energy. So that when our body dies, that EMS, the electromagnetic soul, does not die with the body. It is transferred to a higher frequency, the afterlife frequency. That's just part of it. And I explain this in much greater detail in the book. The EMS, and I just gave 2 lectures on this, one for the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and then another one for Spiritual Awakenings International. And the talks I gave were very different, but the EMS is also how to explain what happens with near-death experiences, with shared death experiences where more than one person experiences the same NDE, near-death experience, or bystanders of someone who is dying, that they're able to see and experience what the person transitioning is seeing, how spirit communication works, what an out-of-body experience is, and how it is that spirits can and will communicate with people who are not necessarily mediums. And this term is now being used by scientists in the field. They said, Mark, this I've had a couple of them really compliment me on this, which is very humbling and a tremendous honor. Yeah. And so the term EMS is getting to be used in the scientific community.
So we have the EMS. Now, can mine connect to yours?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all energetically interconnected. That's why, all right, you're a mom, okay?
Right.
So even if, one of your kids is not on a cell phone and something happens to one of them, maybe they trip and fall, get hurt, you kind of know, don't you?
Yeah, no, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Bingo.
So then this would explain collective consciousness.
Absolutely. Collective consciousness is another one of my terms that I'm putting forward, but I'm expanding that in the chapter known as collective consciousness communication. So think of your EMS as a drop of water. And when you die, that drop of water leaves your brain and it plunges into this ocean. And this ocean is the eternal sea of souls. And so now your EMS, and you maintain your individuality. Now your EMS is interfacing with other souls that are interfacing and linked to other souls, other souls, other souls. So now they're part of this vast information network. And collective consciousness, which is what that is, we've all heard the term we're all cells in the body of God and that we're all interconnected. Well, this is what that means. And in collective consciousness communication, let's say I'm doing a reading for you and you got 4 or 5 spirits come through and then they start giving you messages, maybe about your health, maybe about what's going on with your kids, something about your well-being. They can bring up, things to avoid and watch out for. That's what I call collective consciousness communication. But it's a two-way street because I've been conducting events, where I'll be in front of, a couple hundred people and spirits will come through. Let's say like I was at one event and I got all these, I said, okay, I'm picking up on like 6 or 7 young men. They all like between 18 and 24 and they all died from suicide. And I just was describing this and like 6 hands go up in the audience. Each one of those families had lost a young man from suicide. So I had this whole group of young men and then they came in tandem and then they separated out. And so I was drawn to the first family and the spirit gave what he looked like, his name, just identified, so they all came in together. Right. Also, I may be giving a message to one person, or it looks like I'm giving a message to one person in the audience, but it resonates with 15 or 20 other people. I tell everyone, go with that. Because there's a reason they're piggybacking that message to that person. Right. So even if you don't get an individualized reading, if the information coming through is relevant to you, if it touches your heartstrings, accept that. Here's why. Spirits know that I'm a finite human being and that my limited human brain can only handle one concept at a time. But that doesn't keep them from putting several messages in one. And people say, well, that sounds like science fiction. It's like, okay, so the Pentagon sends a message to Camp Pendleton, and it sends one signal, yet encrypted on that are several encrypted messages. Look, if human technology can do this, that's what spirits are doing, except what they're doing is much more sophisticated.
This is amazing because I've always been interested in metaphysics and quantum mechanics and consciousness. It was a hard concept for me to really wrap my head around, but this, the way that you've just explained it, I can visualize it and I can see it and I can apply it to the other things that I've learned, especially when it comes to oneness and how separation is an illusion. And through what you just explained, it shows it right there. Like,
Well, yes. And the thing is, though, we are individuals, but we're energetically linked to a greater whole.
right,
And this gets back
right.
to everything on the subatomic level is electromagnetic energy, a particle of electromagnetic energy known as a quantum, plural is quanta. So what that means, Lady Ann, is that, and we also know that everything has a vibration. Okay, so
Yes.
so all the subatomic particles have a vibration. The thing is,
Right.
the desk that you're sitting at, yes, it's an inanimate object, meaning that it's not alive, but at its most basic subatomic level, it's composed of the same form of electromagnetic energy that you are. It's just
Right.
vibrating at a very low and slow frequency, whereas
Right.
you are vibrating at a much higher frequency. And then again, there's the radio waves that the show is being broadcast on. They too are at a different frequency, and they too, radio waves are also a form of electromagnetic energy, as is light. Gamma rays, X-rays, infrared, ultraviolet. So everything at its most basic level is the same form of energy, ergo we are all energetically linked. So these are some of the things that I explain in the afterlife frequency. Try to do it in a way that people can understand and relate to it. Because,
Right.
When I was in law school, I remember suffering through these incredibly boring books, okay?
Right.
And then I got out of law school, and guess what? There were even more incredibly boring books. And you'd have these judges that may be brilliant legal scholars, but they just had no gift for making anything interesting or relatable. And I said, there's no way I'm ever going to do that to anybody when I write books. So, and with all due respect to the legal profession, and there are some judges who are brilliant writers and can explain, great things. And thank you to the 2% of you that are.
So also, going off of the consciousness and everything, which this really gets me excited, and I really want to get my hands on your book. Also, you've said that the afterlife frequency helps people develop a heightened sense of spiritual situational awareness. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. When I was a kid, my dad used to drill into me, be aware. Well, he was a Navy SEAL. All right. Talk to any first responder, any police officer, any firefighter or paramedic. Talk to anybody in the military. And situational awareness is a key skill, not just in doing your job, but also in staying alive. And that means that you're aware of everything that's going on around you in a sphere. In other words, it's like a 360-degree attention span. There's a lot of people who just sort of plot into a situation without looking. But my dad said, always be aware of your surroundings. And then when I began working very deeply with my spirituality, I realized that it expands even beyond that to not just the material world, but also to the spiritual. And spiritual situational awareness is an awareness of what is going on with you in this world, but also energetically around us. So that if you pick up on the subtle signs from spirits, or you get that feeling or whatever, that gives you the heads up to avoid a dangerous condition, place, or person. And so in the afterlife frequency, I explain and teach people how to expand and develop their spiritual situational awareness.
That's wonderful. Wow. I'm just so excited right now to have you on here and to be talking about this. And it's funny because it's very synchronistic as well to everything that I've been studying. So
that's why the time is right for the afterlife frequency, because thing is about this book, the afterlife frequency is not about turning people into mediums. A lot of my colleagues really become a medium, and you're either a medium or you're not. Now, and I don't mean that in an impolite manner. Everybody can swim to some extent. Everybody can bang around on a piano. Everybody can do math to some extent. But some people are going to be a lot better at it than others. I mean, I'm not going to sit down and all of a sudden on a piano crank out, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Or, I'm not going to pick up a guitar and, do the lead to Stairway to Heaven or whatever.
Right.
Nor am I going to do calculations that rival Stephen Hawking's, nor am I going to, win even one gold medal, much less 2 dozen like Michael Phelps. But the thing is, I can still have those experiences. And so what the afterlife frequency does is instead of trying to turn you into a medium, it teaches you how to enhance your sense of spiritual situational awareness so that when spirits are transmitting a message to you, that you can get the most benefit from it.
Right. And actually, I do have another question. So this was something that one of my other friends and I were talking about when it comes to personal resonance and your path and your experience here. In some instances, 2 people can be together. Let's say you and I go to Gettysburg, whereas you might see a full soldier spirit, but I only see an orb. Do you know why that is?
It has a lot to do with how we're interpreting the electromagnetic soul or the residual energy echo that we're encountering. So it's like some mediums are more visual, some mediums are more auditory, some feel things. And so maybe you're seeing an orb because you're sensitive to the energy, you're picking up on that. And as long as you say, well, I'm getting an orb and I feel that this was a soldier, all right? Whereas I may get a visual on the soldier. So essentially, we are receiving the same electromagnetic impulse. It's how we interpret it. So, for example, let's say I said the word to you, see, all right?
Okay.
We speak English, so when we hear see, we're thinking S-E-E, right? Like
I did. Yes.
Right. What if English was your second language and your primary language was Spanish? That would mean to you yes.
Oh,
okay.
Right.
That's why in interpreting messages transmitted from the collective consciousness, got to be very careful about jumping to conclusions. Let's get the information first. And also, one message can have more than one level of significance and mean many different things. And people say, well, that sounds like, you're making stuff up. Yeah, but think of words that we use like here. Is it H-E-R-E or H-E-A-R? What about W-I-N-D? Is it wind or is it wind? See, we do things like this all the time. We just don't think about it, Yeah.
True.
If I said there, is it T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R, or T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E? The same sound with 3 very different meanings.
That's true. And I have to ask, speaking of messages, do you have a spiritual message for the world?
Yes. And I want to explain how it came to me. When my mother passed, she died in her sleep from heart failure. It just basically pulled the rug out from under me. And I was practicing law and I was driving back from court. It was about 2 weeks after she died. And one of those waves of grief hit me. So I thought, all right, let me pull over. I shouldn't be driving when I'm feeling like this. And I pulled over and I'm sitting there in this parking spot. It was out in front of this little strip mall. I was just so overcome with grief. And all of a sudden, this flash of light, and it felt like it was in my head, but it felt like it was in the car. And I immediately turned and looked at the passenger seat, and I saw the silhouette of my mother just for a second in the silver white light, and her voice filled my head. And she said, Mark, you have been given the gift of mediumship so that you would not be crushed by grief. But now you must help those who are suffering with theirs. And it is your obligation to help people, and this is the message, understand that God exists, that heaven exists, that our souls are immortal living spirits, that we can communicate with those souls, and that we will be reunited with our loved ones when it is our time to leave this world. Wow, talk about an aha moment. I broke out into a sweat. I fell back into my seat, and I'm sitting there going, okay. Now, look, I'd had these experiences my whole life, but this was one of, like getting hit by a fire hose, point blank
Oh,
range.
yeah.
And the thing is, I was a senior partner in a law firm. Within a year, all of that was behind me. And then I was doing this full time. So it's not like, oh, the door opened. No, the door got kicked open and I got shoved through it. And the thing is,
Right?
I've never looked back. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So my message is that God, the divine power exists, that heaven, the afterlife, nirvana, the other side, whatever you want to call it, the afterlife frequency exists, that our electromagnetic soul exists and is an immortal living being, that we can communicate with souls, and that we'll be reunited with our loved ones in the light when it is our appointed time to leave the material world. And that is what my message is. And does this make you all better grieving from a loved one? No, but yes, because nothing can take away the pain from the loss of a loved one. But what we can do is change our perspective on how we react to that pain. And I believe that message gives us that perspective that we are only living in the material world for now.
Wow. That is powerful. That is beautiful. It's so healing just hearing that. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for writing that book. And I definitely cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's on sale. People can order it at all fine bookstores or Amazon.com. It's The Afterlife Frequency, or you can visit my website to get it, which is afterlifefrequency.com. Also, I invite people to sign up for my newsletter. If you want to find out about booking a one-on-one private session with me, I do my readings on the phone, which are just as accurate as in-person readings. And all of that is through my website, afterlifefrequency.com. And Lady Ann, I really want to thank you for having me as your guest on the Caravan of Lore podcast. It's really been an honor, and just thank you so much. And to all the listeners, keep tuning in, because let me tell you, Lady Ann, she rocks.
Circles round my head, leaves go up in flames of red, in flames of red. Worry ties me to the ground, feathers fall without a sound, without a sound. Burn on, dear flame, burn on, there's a light in the fire. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. The black heart calls to your deepest desire. Dead, old, rotten idea. You grow heavy, then you fall, so heavy, then you fall to the ground. I lay in a pile of my broken plans. They turn red and then they fall, so red and then they fall to the ground. I'm making wings black as night. I wait until the time is right. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. There's a light in the fire. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. The black heart calls to your deepest desire. In my dreams I am flying high, river, green grass lay still. And from the ground I rise, lift up my arms, spread feet wide. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. There's a light in the fire. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. The black hawk calls to your deepest desire. Burn on, dear flame, burn on. There's a light in the fire. Burn on, dear flame.